Michael Haneke's Funny Games, released in 1997, and Michael Haneke's Funny Games, released 2007, feature a scene early on where two young men named Peter and Paul visit Anna, her husband, and their son at their lake house and ask to borrow some eggs. Spoiler warning, by the way, for Funny Games and also for Funny Games. Paul accidentally breaks the eggs and asks for more, which are also accidentally broken when the family dog jumps on him. He then accidentally knocks their phone into the kitchen sink water and then demands more eggs. Paul starts playing around with a golf club as Anna becomes increasingly frustrated with their behavior. The situation quickly escalates from an annoying instance of intrusive behavior into confrontative aggression and physical violence. Peter, hey, it's me from Beyond the Edit. This part of the audio got super corrupted. I don't know why, and I cannot fix it, so that is why this sounds different. What happens here is that Anna's poor husband, Anna/Anne, she's Anne in the 2007 one, but her poor husband gets whacked with the golf club, and he's pretty much put out of service for the rest of the movie, and then the family is taken hostage. We then spend most of the film's runtime at the mercy of the two young men, who act with extreme cruelty and sadism as they tear away at everything Anna holds near and dear, ripping her life apart like wrapping paper on a Christmas present. As Anna is psychologically flayed, the film works overtime, doing everything in its power to convince us that this situation is hopeless, that there will be no recourse, revenge, or justice for Anna and her family, but this is all a part of the movie's big trick. As just when Anna has truly lost everything, she gets the jump on Peter and shoots him dead. Paul's smug veneer vanishes as things finally go wrong for him. This moment of triumph completely changes the complexion of the film. I'm not sure if I can name another movie whose central ethos has flipped so dramatically on a dime. So then, and
Okay, that was the test run. Now we're gonna go for the Olympic gold. Whether it's the fast and almost painless big gun, or the slow, drawn-out...
Funny Games is, simply put, a malicious movie, and I say that with a lot of love. It is a very clever, fourth-wall-breaking deconstruction of the home invasion thriller, and at no point is it more upfront about what it is doing than right here. Although, maybe not. There is another moment earlier in the film where Paul literally looks into the camera and winks, but still, here we get a sort of pseudo-twist that actually has nothing to do with Anna, even though she is the one whose agency is being robbed. This moment is all about flipping the bird directly at us. From Anna's point of view, she never got a leg up on Peter and Paul. The rewind is the film essentially trolling the audience and flashing its true colors like a dancing peacock. This scene is both horrifying and honestly pretty funny, and I will never forget the nervous laughter and feeling of my heart dropping that it invoked. This is one of my favorite horror scenes, and I'd love to tell you about some more of my favorite horror scenes, but first I have to give a quick spoiler warning for the titles that will be discussed in this video. I have timestamped when we will be talking about what, but still, some discussion may spill over a little bit, and if you scroll down to the description of this video, you will see a list of all of the media featured, including the music that was used. But let's go ahead and get into the spoiler warning.
Brasilia will snack on a bloodhounds and you're supposed to clean out its mouth. Brasilia will stalk to our food crops. He's coming to hunt you down. Brasilia will walk in the treetops and on you fall down. Brasilia will borrow the earth's rock. He will root you out. Brasilia will walk on the water. Our beast will not drown. Brasilia, he'll stand on the mountain. Oh, we'll hear him howl. La la lay-o, la la lay-o, la la lay-o.
let's talk about Insidious. But first, before I forget, for the audio listeners, I will be spoiling Insidious's villain reveal, some mostly vague elements of Twin Peaks, the first half of the house that Jack built, most of the sadness, most of possession, most of angst, and the first half of Lost Highway, most of the innocence, the big twist in Cabin in the Woods, some key moments from Shin Godzilla, and Season 7, Episode 18 of Grey's Anatomy. James Wan's 2010 film Insidious is actually one of the first films I fell in love with. As a kid, this was like the scariest thing ever, and it certainly does have some effective moments in it and a lot of jump scares, but really there is one standout moment, and of course it is the reveal of the Darth Maul / red face / lipstick face demon. He has many nicknames, whatever you want to call him, and this little introduction invokes a lot of wonder, honestly, like what on earth is going on here? He's blaring Tiny Tim on vinyl, he's sharpening his claws while little marionettes dance around his, what is this, a workshop? It is an outstanding introduction to this character that raises quite a few questions, and if you haven't seen these movies, by the way, none of these questions are ever answered. The first sequel decides to completely sideline this guy in favor of a shockingly transphobic alternative, and this antagonist does not come even close to living up to the promise of this moment, but still, I adore it. It is absolutely one of my favorite moments in any horror movie ever. Do y'all ever feel embarrassed about liking a movie, or have you ever sort of fought against yourself enjoying a film that you know you probably shouldn't? Rob Jabaz's 2021 film The Sadness is one of those for me. It's a movie that made me question my own taste, and speaking of taste, this is a horrifically distasteful film. It features all manner of shocking and extreme violence, and it just tries so hard to push the envelope as far as possible, partly just for its own sake, and in my opinion, in that pursuit, the film takes on a certain immature edginess. A lot of this movie feels like something Christopher Moltisanti would pitch, but to be fair, there is a bit of a point here. This is mostly in service of a central idea. The film is an ultra-violent and a cynical response to a lot of society and its governing bodies' behavior during the COVID-19 pandemic, but still, the film's take here is pretty shallow.
Having said that,
Yes.
let me say this.
Right. You say what you really want to say.
Yeah.
And then you negate it.
Now, having said that, so what is that? So you win either way.
Having said that, the cavalcade of blood and gore that the film rains down upon you is often a lot of fun, and the execution is largely impressive. The special effects team absolutely popped off. The bits and pieces of internal organs, brain matter, and chunks of flesh splattered across the screen look really damn good, and there is this one big narrative swing involving the president of China that is somehow so much more outrageous than everything else in the film that I really kind of respected it. Should the movie be having as much fun as it is with what it is depicting? I would say honestly, probably not, but that doesn't mean that the viewer can't have a bit of fun too. This is against all odds a film that I really enjoyed, aside from this one scene about half an hour into the film. So there is this disease that is spreading extremely quickly. It is ultra contagious, and it causes people to just turn into sadistic, murderous monsters, and when the disease takes hold, the infected always cry a single tear before succumbing to its influence. For the most part, the ensuing carnage, no matter how intense, is just silly enough to feel elevated, but there is this scene on a subway train that was just a little too real for me. This one guy has been infected, and he takes out a knife, and it just starts stabbing. And credit to all of the actors involved here, their reactions feel very real. Credit to the team who blocked this scene out, because all of the spacing involved as this sequence erupts into a full-blown massacre is really good. It really captures the suddenness of this kind of event, and it just rocked me a bit. This is an extremely effective scene of violence that horrified me. I had this professor in college who was sharp as a tack, way too smart to be working at this school, and he told me one time if you are ever in a public place, say for example a restaurant, and someone walks in open carrying a firearm, you should immediately leave. Don't even pay the bill, just get up and go, because the difference between that being a normal, innocuous thing or being the worst possible outcome is 1 second. And I don't know, something about this scene just reminded me of that. Jack Clayton's 1961 film The Innocents is a very faithful retelling of Henry James's 1898 novel The Turn of the Screw. The movie is gorgeously shot on CinemaScope in black and white, and there are some very cool pre-split diopter type shots that are very neat, and it also boasts some very creepy special effects, but no moment is more eerie and affecting than when our protagonist, the governess Miss Giddens, spots the ghost of her predecessor watching her from across a river. All she does is just look. She's not doing anything necessarily scary. She's just sort of there, but it is the fact that she is so clearly really there, even though only Miss Giddens can see her, that it just sort of, I don't know, it invokes a feeling that really got under my skin. It is a hair-raising moment that took me on a ride into the uncanny valley that I just wasn't fully prepared for. And while we are in that valley, we've got to pay respect, we've got to pay tribute to the master of the uncanny, David Lynch. His early 90s series Twin Peaks, also complemented by a prequel film and revived for a final season in 2017, is a master's showcase of the power of uncanny horror, as are just about all of his movies. In Twin Peaks, there are so many scenes played normally or in reverse that are so off-putting and also iconic that I could talk about the associated horrors for hours. But there is this tiny little bit from the final season that I love so much. It's my favorite scene in the entire show. A couple of gunshots fly into this diner where Deputy Bobby is having dinner, and so he springs into action and discovers that they were fired by a kid who thought the gun was probably a toy. This whole scene stops traffic while the police sort everything out, and then this one lady stopped in her car just starts wigging out.
We're already late. We're late for dinner. It's way past 6:30. Why is this happening?
And she really doesn't want to be made late.
Out the window. Her uncle is joining us. She hasn't seen him in a very long while. We're late.
Then her kid sort of rises from the depths of the car and starts throwing up on her while she just screams and takes it, and Bobby just sort of watches the whole thing play out, completely bewildered, and then it's over and the scene is never remarked on again. I love when a sequence like this can be both funny and horrifying. The strangeness of it is just the cherry on top, and what can I say? I love it. I am also very fond of the scene from Lynch's 1997 film Lost Highway, where our protagonist Fred first meets the mystery man, played perfectly by Robert Blake, who may or may not have killed his wife 4 years later.
Allegedly. But also really.
But anyways, the mystery man tells Fred that he is at his house right now, at this very moment, and implores him to call home, where he does in fact pick up. Ugh, this scene is just so fucking creepy. This gets me so bad every time. Lynch is just one of the greatest to ever do it. For most of my life, representation in media has not been a problem. I am a straight white man. That is a broad demographic that has mountains beyond mountains of art catered to it, and I've never had any issues seeing myself up on the big screen. That was until 2 years ago I was diagnosed with OCD. There aren't a ton of great depictions of OCD out there. They almost all miss really how intrusive thinking works, and more importantly, how it feels. And yeah, it's different for a lot of people. My mother also has OCD, and her compulsions are very different from mine. Maybe some depictions are just more in line with others' neurodivergent experiences than with mine, but I don't really think so. I just think they're probably not very accurate. So, somewhat unfortunately, in my opinion, the best depiction of OCD that I have ever seen, or at least the one that I have identified the most with, was in Lars von Trier's The House That Jack Built. Our protagonist, Jack, is a self-obsessed, maniacal, murderous serial killer who also just so happens to have OCD, and there is a scene where he kills a woman and then goes to flee the crime scene, but finds himself unable to when he is assaulted by a barrage of sudden and abrasive, intrusive thinking concerning possible evidence he may have left behind. So, in a way, I related to this quite a bit. I actually found this scene pretty horrifying. This is a scene that just like Jack's thoughts have always lingered for me. Hideaki Anno and Shinji Higuchi's 2016 film Shin Godzilla is my favorite Godzilla movie. It is a total reinvention of everyone's favorite giant lizard monster. Here, the monster element is dialed up to maximum, to heights never seen before or since. Godzilla in this movie is absolutely horrifying. He seems almost undead, a being who is in constant agonizing pain. When not breathing fire, he is vomiting blood as he undergoes a series of disgusting evolutions. In this movie, Godzilla is a wretched creature, unconsciously puppeteered around by his own deformed biology, and in a way is weirdly maybe the most sympathetic he has ever been. Still though, the destruction he incurs is more disastrous and devastating than ever seen before, and even then, the film's final shot implies that it could have been so much worse. The scene where he unleashes his atomic breath is downright apocalyptic. It is as if Godzilla has set the entire world ablaze. There is no reason to ask what the end of the world would sound like, because in this scene, legendary composer Shiro Sagisu tells us. This sequence is just breathtaking. It is greatly frightful and dreadfully beautiful. There is nothing else like this. Drew Goddard's 2011 film The Cabin in the Woods is a joyously demented celebration of the horror genre. It is a very fun love letter to the conventions that have shaped its very foundations. This movie rules so hard, and of course, the standout moment, aside from just every second that Richard Jenkins is on screen, he is so funny in this, and so is Bradley Whitford too, but of course the standout sequence is when all of the different monsters are released and wreak havoc. It's just an awesome piece of filmmaking. Gerald Cargill's 1983 film Angst is a vile and disgusting film. In a good way, though. It is a depraved POV of a man who can no longer fight his darkest urges. The camera work is just as anxious and neurotic as our protagonist. The music is constricting. It is a claustrophobic experience, like being locked in a cage with a wild animal. But forget the murders, the frothing at the mouth violence depicted, the unspeakable crimes. This part in the beginning where he eats a sausage is the closest a movie has ever come to making me throw up. And it goes on for so long too. It is revolting. I hate it so much. In a good way though. No performer has ever gone as hard in a role as Isabella Gianni did in Andrzej Zulawski's 1981 film Possession. Her performance here is almost a lost art. Most acting in cinema today is either an attempt at some form of realism or quirkiness, but Gianni's insane expressionist style chosen for this role, especially in the legendary subway scene, is nothing short of iconic. I don't want to spoil it because then I'd have to go back and re-edit the spoiler warning, but a recent horror release featured a lengthy tribute to this scene, and that's just how impactful this was. There is nothing else like it. It is so balls to the wall weird and crazy. It's like watching a ballet dancer perform on heroin. It's one of the greatest horror scenes of all time. I gotta say though, aside from that one sequence from Talk to Me that was covered in my last video, I don't think I have ever experienced as much fear as in this final scene I'm going to talk about. Genuinely, this is the most horrified I have ever been watching I was gonna say watching a movie, but this is actually from an episode of television, although it's worse than that because it's a full episode of television. The extremely long-running medical drama Grey's Anatomy is pretty much exactly like every other medical drama out there, except for House. That show was a fever dream.
Sorry to interrupt. Here's my poo.
Grey's Anatomy is bog fucking standard, and that's why it's good background sometimes. My wife and I have had it on recently while we eat dinner and stuff like that, and just sweet, merciful Jesus, the showrunners lost their damn minds in season 7. There is an episode where these two surgeons who are also partners, everybody bangs everybody in the show, by the way, and one of them is pregnant, and that whole situation is actually pretty complicated too, but anyways, there's a car crash, and she goes through the front window, and then something very strange happens.
Nobody knows where we might end up. Nobody knows.
For those who haven't seen any of Grey's Anatomy, one, nothing like this has ever happened before. This isn't a musical. And two, those are lyrics from the opening title song that she's singing. So I don't know. This is a pretty weird fourth wall breaking beat that I just kind of wrote off at first, but then the unspeakable happened.
Got that? Stay with me.
Don't quite know how to say.
Listen, I love musicals. I feel neutral about jukebox musicals, but the terror that I felt in my heart when I realized that this was what this episode was going to be.
I don't like it. It's horrible, but it is that simple. We can have another baby. We
For
can't
the
have another
dawn, my
The secondhand embarrassment, oh my word. I have never seen anything like this in my life.
Step one, you say we need to talk.
This is an infamously bad episode of television, and they very wisely never tried anything like this again. Shout out to Marius the Consul in One Fiction for correctly identifying some of the films featured in this video on the last community post, and props to Declan Foster, who was only one word off on guessing the title. To be fair, this title was a bit broad, and keep an eye out for the next community post. It'll probably be up sometime tomorrow in preparation for Sunday or Monday's video, whenever I get it done, and make sure to comment down below with your favorite horror scenes, and if you'd like to see a part 2 or whatever else you'd like to see next.